The early mornings in Mistletoe Acres were the kind that whispered promises of tranquility and unbroken routines. Each dawn was a gentle sweep of pastel hues across the sky, painting the rows of nearly identical houses in soft light. Lawns were manicured with the precision of surgical incisions, each blade of grass standing at attention, a tribute to suburban order. I lived at the end of the cul-de-sac, a quaint brick house that bore witness to the neighborhood's quiet dramas. It was a place where the air held secrets beneath its pleasant facade, where every chuckle was a smirk and every smile a thin veil over simmering tensions. Karen was the president of our homeowners association. She was a force of nature wrapped in a floral blouse and pearls. Her power concentrated in the clipped staccato of her heels clicking their command on asphalt. She relished the role, patrolling the streets with the fervor of a monarch inspecting her realm. Her eyes, sharp as ice picks, found infractions in every corner, each a personal affront to her reign of order. The first letter arrived tucked in the doorframe, crisp and official. A new fee. It declared, necessary for the maintenance of perfection. It wasn't unexpected. Karen's thirst for control often manifested through bylaws and regulations, each more convoluted and self-serving than the last. The irony, of course, was thick enough to drown in the board, in its enthusiasm for dominance, had overlooked one crucial detail: the land beneath their feet. The very ground they walked with unearned authority was mine, a quiet inheritance, left by a grandfather whose love for parcels of earth had left me with a small empire beneath the asphalt and picket fences. I traced the edge of the letter with a fingertip, amused. The fee was negligible, a pittance disguised as a decree. For now, I would allow Karen her petty victories, her paper crowns. There was beauty in watching the self-important spin their webs, unaware that the loom was not their own. She didn't understand yet the tangled threads of her machinations, woven with an arrogance as delicate as it was fragile, were my amusement. My gaze drifted to the window, where the world beyond was filtered through lace curtains. Karen's morning ritual commenced in the street below, her presence a punctuation mark in the rhythm of suburbia. Her head turned sharply, scanning for deviations, her satisfaction visible as she noted the absence of any. Her first act of the day, fulfilled with the solemnity of a royal decree. My peace was undisturbed, my calm a steady river beneath her storm. The knowledge of my ownership was a quiet symphony, a secret melody in the rustling leaves. I sipped my coffee, savoring its warmth, letting the morning unfold at its own measured pace. Karen was content, for now, wrapped in her illusions of power, but the roots of my ownership ran deep, and the soil was rich with possibility. In the quiet of my mind, I planted seeds of patience, knowing that beneath the weight of her own making, Karen would eventually stumble. Until then, I was content to watch the play unfold, each act a testament to the folly of ignorance. The afternoon sun cast long shadows over the manicured lawns, creating an illusion of calm, but beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. The winds of change had started to stir, rustling the leaves and unsettling the well-ordered community with whispers of chaos. Karen was at it again. Her latest decree, slipped under doorways with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel, bore a list of grievances as thick as the community bylaws. Each line item seemed plucked from the depths of an overactive imagination, a testament to her fervent dedication to the cause of control. A new absurdity. No hanging of laundry outside, even on the sunniest of days. The irony was palpable. In a town touted for its green initiatives, one could not harness the sun's natural drying energy. Her rules seemed to sprout overnight, invasive weeds choking out the common sense that once thrived here. Unfair citations followed swiftly, like crows alighting on fresh carrion. My mailbox, once a silent sentry, now bulged with official-looking envelopes bearing the HOA's crest. Each citation dripped with a formality that bordered on the absurd. A blade of grass too high, a garden gnome positioned a fraction off its designated perch, each infraction meticulously noted, penalties accruing with the inevitability of a gathering storm. The gossip spread like wildfire, stoked by Karen's well-manicured hand. Neighbors exchanged wary glances, their conversations laced with the acrid scent of suspicion. Subtle nods and whispered conjecture colored the air, a tapestry of intrigue woven into the fabric of daily life. "Did you hear?" they'd murmur, eyes darting to ensure Karen wasn't lurking among the petunias. A web of narratives spun, each thread tugging at the community's fragile unity. Yet, amidst the escalating absurdity, I remained a calm sea in the eye of the storm. Patience, I reminded myself, was a virtue. The knowledge I harbored was a coiled spring, waiting for the precise moment to unfurl, for I knew of the keystone that held this precarious arch in place, an unseen truth, hidden beneath layers of paperwork and real estate jargon. The land beneath their feet was mine, a silent testament to a past transaction that bound this community to me with invisible threads. There was a peculiar satisfaction in watching the drama unfold. Like observing a tragic opera from the comfort of a private box seat, Karen's antics were but a prelude to the inevitable crescendo. I bided my time, arranging my pieces on the chessboard with deliberate care, each move calculated, each response measured. My thoughts danced through the possibilities, scenarios branching like the limbs of an ancient oak. The irony was rich, almost decadent. Karen, so consumed by her desire for control, had unwittingly ensnared herself in a web of her own making. Her fortress, built on a foundation of rules and regulations, was more fragile than she could ever imagine. And so, I watched, listened, waited. The balance would tip soon enough, and when it did, the revelation would be as clear and irrefutable as the midday sun. Until then, I remained the silent guardian of my hidden dominion, a quiet power biding its time. In the end, patience would yield its reward. As surely as the tides turn and the seasons change, my moment would come, and when it did, the world Karen thought she controlled would shift beneath her, like sand slipping through clenched fingers. The chill of dawn crept inside my bones as I sat in my kitchen, the cold tile feeling foreign and unfriendly beneath my feet. I glanced at the stack of papers spread across the table, each sheet a testament to the meticulous nature of my plan. The HOA's audacity still lingered like a bitter aftertaste in my mouth, an affront that demanded retribution. Their illegal fee hike was the final straw that snapped the camel's already strained back. I had long suspected their motives were less than noble, but the latest maneuver was a step too far. They played their cards without knowing mine. The irony was almost poetic. Little did they realize that, while they schemed and plotted, I held the ultimate trump card. The lines of ownership were clear and legally binding, buried deep within the labyrinth of property laws. My family's foresight, a legacy hidden beneath layers of corporate veils, had positioned me as the unseen hand behind their very existence. It was time to illuminate their ignorance with a subtle, yet defining blow. I pulled up my laptop, the keyboard familiar under my fingertips. The digital realm became my canvas, my brushstrokes precise and calculated. I documented everything: the inflated fees, the arbitrary rules, the pointed letters dripping with feigned decorum. Each piece of evidence was a tile in the mosaic of their folly. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting striped shadows across the room. It was almost poetic how light could both reveal and conceal, much like the truth I was about to unveil. I imagined their faces when they realized their antagonist was the very foundation they stood upon. A soft rumbling in the distance signaled the awakening of suburbia, the neighborhood slowly stirring to life. I felt the stirring of anticipation in my own chest, a quiet thrill at the impending revelation. Their reaction would be a symphony of disbelief. Each email, every letter was sent with precision, a mere whisper for now, but one that would crescendo into an undeniable truth. I set the wheels in motion with a few deft keystrokes, the legal ramifications resting heavily on the digital thread I wove. The irony of it all was not lost on me. Here I was, the ghost they never saw, the silent guardian of their coveted domain. They had pushed and prodded, poked at the invisible bear until it woke with a slow, deliberate stretch. My phone buzzed. A single notification that felt like the turning of a page. The words were succinct, the impact profound. Their formal acknowledgement of my evidence arrived like the first drop of rain before a storm. Unseen forces now stirred in the background, the quiet machinery of legal righteousness beginning to whir. I imagined them now, the board members, seated around their polished table, the smugness draining from their faces like color from a watercolor painting caught in the rain. Their eyes would dart over the documents, the realization dawning slowly, painfully, that they had been playing a game they were never intended to win. In life, power was often an invisible currency, most potent when its presence was least suspected. As the day unfolded, I knew it was only a matter of time before their facade crumbled, piece by piece, like an old, untended mosaic. All it took was one crack to let the light in. And now, the stage was set. The players had made their final moves, and I, the hidden director of this elaborate play, awaited the curtain call. It was nearly time for the grand reveal, their ignorance to be replaced with the cold, hard truth, the truth that the land they governed, with its manicured lawns and pristine facades, had always been mine. The morning sun poured through the windows, casting long shadows that stretched across the polished floors, like time itself was trying to reach out and drag me back. I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring the quiet before the storm. It was an ordinary day to everyone else, but in our little neighborhood, ordinary had become a rare treasure. The air buzzed with a tense undercurrent, a symphony of whispers and furtive glances that reverberated down the tree-lined streets. My neighbors had begun to notice the cracks. Little things at first, an auction sign here, a notice of sale there, like cracks in a dam holding back a sea of secrets. They were starting to connect the dots, each revelation a brushstroke in a painting only I knew the full scope of. The HOA building stood like a fortress of misplaced authority, its brick facade attempting to mask the turmoil within. But facades are fragile things, and all it takes is a gentle push to send them crumbling. I had no need for words to fuel the fire I'd started. The truth was its own accelerant, silently spreading from house to house. Each day, the air grew thicker with suspicion. People lingered longer by their mailboxes or gathered in small knots on the curbs, their conversations laced with uncertainty. The hierarchy that had once seemed immovable was now teetering, like a top spun too hard, wobbling under its own momentum. I wandered the neighborhood with intentional leisure, watching the ripple effect unfold. Mrs. Evers, whose garden was the envy of the block, frowned deeply, her pruning shears trembling slightly as she paused to watch me pass. A flicker of doubt crossed her face, as if questioning the very soil beneath her feet. The wind carried the scent of honeysuckle, mingling with the subtle tension that filled the air. It was almost poetic, how nature continued its relentless bloom, indifferent to the human dramas playing out beneath its billowy canopies. I found solace in that, a reminder that life pulsed forward, indifferent to the pettiness of fees and fines. As I rounded the corner, the unexpected happened. A voice carried to me, sharp and clear, cutting through the morning stillness. "What have you done?" The words hung in the air, charged and electric, like the distant rumble of an approaching storm. For a moment, time held its breath. I turned slowly, meeting the gaze of my accuser. Her eyes were wide, a mixture of fear and admiration battling for dominance. I offered a calm smile, a silent acknowledgement of the chaos I had wrought. It was a delicate dance. This balance of power, one misstep and the whole precarious structure could come tumbling down. But that was part of the thrill, wasn't it? There was power in silence, in the unspoken understanding that my hand had orchestrated this symphony of dissent. I had become a whisper, a shadow, an unseen force dismantling the old order with methodical precision, and I reveled in it. This quiet rebellion against the tyranny of false authority. As the day wore on, the sky darkened with gathering clouds. A storm was coming, not just the one in the sky, but a reckoning of a different kind, a realization that the world they knew was reshaping itself around them. I watched from my window as the first drops fell, each one a reminder that nature, like justice, was both patient and relentless, and so was I. The morning fog clung to the air with an unshakable grip, its ghostly fingers weaving through the trees that lined our neighborhood. It was the kind of day where the world felt suspended between breaths, waiting for a change. I watched from my window, the steam from my coffee curling in lazy spirals, mirroring the mist outside. Everything was in place. My mind wandered back to the board meeting, a gathering more like a council of crows than a community. Each member, a caricature of authority, had been quick to dismiss my concerns when they decided to raise my HOA fees without due cause. Karen, with her tight smile and talon-like nails tapping the table, led the charge with the arrogance of someone who believes themselves untouchable. Her voice, sharp and dismissive, still echoed in my thoughts like a persistent mosquito. She didn't know. They didn't know. The deed had been the key, a relic of a bygone era when this land was nothing but a stretch of untamed wilds. It was a twist of fate, laden with irony that the very ground under their feet belonged to me, an inheritance from a great-grandfather whose foresight now swept through the present like a dormant hurricane. The papers were signed, sealed in quiet corners of my attorney's oak-paneled office, the air heavy with the scent of old leather and justice. A smile tugged at my lips, not of malice but of satisfaction. Steps had been set in motion the moment Karen dismissed me with a flippant gesture. Now, the law was a gentle whisper in the background, ready to crescendo when the curtain rose. I spent the morning in quiet anticipation, my thoughts dancing with the possibilities of what lay ahead. The neighborhood, unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface, went about its day in blissful ignorance. Children played. Dogs barked. Life hummed with the illusion of normalcy. By mid-afternoon, the first ripples of change began to manifest. A clandestine delivery, a letter, unassuming in its manila wrapper, found its way to each board member, including Karen. The legal rhetoric within, penned with precision and care, outlined the truth they had failed to see. Ownership was mine, their authority a mirage. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows that crept slowly across my yard. The phone rang, a single line of dialogue cutting through the silence as sharp as a knife. Is this some kind of joke?" Her voice, usually so full of certainty, now wavered on the edge of disbelief. I let the silence linger, soaking in the moment. My response was measured, my voice calm as a still lake. In the end, the truth finds its way. "Karen." The line went dead, but the reverberations of the moment hung in the air long after. The neighborhood's equilibrium would shift, the board's hierarchy toppled. I imagined their faces, stunned into silence by the weight of their own hubris. The irony tasted sweet. As dusk settled like a velvet cloak, I stepped out onto my porch, the cool air bracing against my skin. The fog had lifted, revealing a sky awash with stars. Tomorrow, the world would look different. Tomorrow, they would understand the quiet power of retribution. For tonight, the property was mine, and the night, a canvas of endless possibilities. The room was silent, the kind of silence that holds its breath, waiting for life to tip over the edge. I stood at the helm of the community center's modest stage, watching the assorted faces of the HOA board members and the residents they claimed to represent. The air was thick with tension, holding unspoken truths and hidden motives like a moth pinned under glass. Karen sat among them, a porcelain mask of confidence, but her eyes betrayed her, flitting, calculating, bracing for the blow she knew was inevitable. The final act of this little drama we had all unwittingly participated in was about to unfold. I took a moment to soak in the scene. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow that turned the polished parquet floor into a stage for our unscripted performance. Outside, autumn leaves scratched against the window panes, restless with the wind's urgency. It felt poetic, that nature itself was eager to sweep away the decay of mismanagement and betrayal that had settled over this place. With a calm, steady voice, I began to unravel the narrative, the real narrative, that none of them had anticipated. I laid out the cold, hard facts with the precision of a surgeon, the illegal fee hikes, the misuse of funds, the way Karen, in her thirst for power, had manipulated the board into believing her every whim was law. Their reactions were subtle at first, a tightening of jaws, a shift in their seats. Karen's mask started to crack, revealing a frantic disbelief beneath. She was a moth caught in the web of her own making, unable to escape, yet still struggling against the inevitable. I could see the residents piecing together a puzzle they hadn't even realized existed. Their frustration and betrayal took form a gathering storm ready to cleanse the air. Each word I spoke was a pebble in an avalanche, small but inexorable, gaining momentum until it would sweep away all the falsehoods and restore balance. The turning point was the reveal, the deed to the property, my property. I could almost hear the collective intake of breath as I explained how every inch of the community they had thought belonged to them, in fact, belonged to me. The irony was not lost, nor the poetic justice of it. For years, Karen had effectively ruled over everyone with an iron fist, unchecked and unchallenged. Now, she sat powerless, her empire crumbling under the weight of her own deception. It was an exquisite moment, a delicate equilibrium between triumph and accountability. One of the board members, a man known for his reticence, finally broke the silence. His voice was a quiet, powerful echo against the walls of our shared history. The words, though simple, bore the weight of change. What happens now? Now, the word hung in the air, a promise and a challenge. I had no desire to rule, no taste for the power that had so corrupted Karen. My aim was restoration, to return the community to its rightful place in the hands of those who called it home. I offered a plan, a blueprint for a fresh start. It was time to rebuild, not just the structures, but the trust and camaraderie that had been eroded by years of unchecked authority. There would be committees, transparency, and above all, fairness. Karen sat motionless, her reign unraveling like threads from a tapestry. There was no need for further words. The silence spoke volumes. Her influence was a relic, and with it, the old ways would dissolve. As the meeting adjourned, residents lingered, speaking in hushed tones, buoyed by the prospect of renewal. I watched them disperse, their spirits lighter, their hopes rekindled. Outside, the wind carried the scent of possibility, crisp and invigorating. In the end, the real power lay not in ownership, but in stewardship. The community was theirs once more, and with it, the promise of a future unshadowed by deceit. Karen walked past me, her eyes averted, her pace brisk. There was a lesson in her downfall, a reminder that power, unchecked, is as fleeting as the autumn leaves now dancing across the pavement.